All right, welcome to another edition of the Leadership Been Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Sherry.
All right, we are back, and today we have a guest that is not new. She just missed a year, but that happens. So actually, she was in the trend because the Georgia Partnership missed a year too. So everybody's back on track. So I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and we're gonna go from there.
Hi, everybody. So thanks so much for having me back. I'm Senator Kim Jackson, state senator representing a large portion of Central DeKalb and South DeKalb County. And I also serve as the minority whip in the Senate. So really great to be with you all.
Happy to have you back. The world has changed a lot and then not a lot in the last time that we spoke. So I'm definitely excited we get to spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the Gold Dome, especially what's happened this year since we just had Sine Die, a week ago?
That's
a
right.
little over a week ago. So another session down. It's also an important year. It's a midterm election year, which we've been talking about. So definitely want to talk a lot about potential races this year. But want to give people a lot more insight about what you do, what your role is. You're over District 41. You're also a farmer, an Emory alum. Shout out to Emory, which is exciting.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Aren't you a goat herder, too? Don't you have goats?
I do have goats.
She's a goat herder, too. That's why that sticks out, but she's a goat herder.
Yes.
That's
and a priest.
That's right.
Oh, that's a lot. So can we start in the very, very beginning? Like, what's this term been like for you? How would you describe this past session, 2025, 2026, versus your initial start in state politics? Like, what was different?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest differences from when I started is just the composition of the Senate in itself in terms of who's running for higher office and who's not. So this year we had, I think, 9 different members seeking higher office in the Senate. And that just changes everything. People are on their year out, so they're trying to get, their last thing out. But they're also politicking a whole lot harder, right? Because they're running for that mailer, that flyer that can say they passed this or they stopped this. And so wanting to spend a lot more time in the well, getting their, free media time. So the tenor was just really, really different this year in terms of, I think, almost some aggressiveness in terms of people who were running for office wanting to be out front.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some of those higher offices? Like, what are some things they were trying to run for?
Yeah, interestingly, we have 5 people in the body running for lieutenant governor. 4 of whom are running.
Who's president of the Senate in
right,
Georgia,
it's the president of the Senate. So that is the person who presides over the same body. So basically, they were running to become our bosses in the same chamber. 4 of whom are running against each other in the same primary, and then 2 of whom were running against each other in the same primary on the Democratic side. So, you've got 6 people right there in the same chamber vying for the exact same position. That would be the president of the Senate.
What does that feel like? Like, what kind of atmosphere does that create?
I mean, it was just strange, honestly. And to see where the factions were, who was trying to fight with whom. And, I had one colleague who came up to me who's a Republican and was just like, man, these are my friends who are running against each other. This is so hard. And I think that is really true. I believe there's some things that didn't happen in the Senate largely because of that dynamic, because at some point you've got multiple camps that are happening within the same party, right?
Yeah.
And so we were able to really kind of capitalize on some of those factions as a result of it.
So this was past healthy competition. This was
I mean, it's still Republican, so I don't know how healthy much of anything that they do is.
This is very true. I can't imagine what that's like. All right, what you have first?
So this reminds me also just about terms in general. I feel like Georgia, we talk a little bit about other states. I work in a few other states, and I feel like Georgia has pretty short terms also for the assembly. So isn't everyone, to an extent, do you kind of have to be in campaign mode even if you're not seeking a higher office?
Yeah, I mean, everybody runs every 2 years, regardless of House or Senate. So there is a piece of that. But there's an added level of campaigning that happens when you are not the incumbent and you're running for higher office. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, technically, sure, I'm in campaign mode because I'm up for election. I'm thinking about, what am I doing in terms of earned media and things like that. But it's notched up 10 times higher when you've got somebody who's running for statewide office.
I do have questions about that for you as well, because I'm very curious about future plans for you and where you see yourself. But for now, can you talk about what your biggest takeaways were just from this past session, things that you're proud of, things that did not go, the way that you hoped that they would go, just so people know some of what the accomplishments were, and then we can get into them in detail.
So this is the first year that I've served in the Senate where we haven't passed culture war bills. So things that are attacking trans kids, gay folks, just the kind of general culture war bills.
But none of that came up?
None of that came up
Really?
For the entire session. They took a break on it.
Really?
I know, right? It's kind of shocking.
That seems like a Twin Peaks experience.
It was, there's like one little one that happened that was kind of a gotcha, but it never moved anywhere. People still introduce them, but in terms of moving, just those big culture war bills weren't there. And so really grateful that those were essentially stopped, not taken up. That felt really good. I will say the Republican Party is pretty hell-bent on divesting from government, defunding government, if you will, is the way that I would talk about it. So there was this huge push to eliminate income taxes, which, we're coming up on tax day. Nobody likes paying taxes. But the reality is we all need to pay taxes to fund government. And so there's this huge push in the Senate to eliminate the income tax and a huge push in the House to eliminate property taxes. Neither of those passed. Now, I know a lot of listeners, they'll be like, well, of course I want my income tax eliminated. Of course I want my property taxes eliminated. Eliminating property taxes, what that actually does is it defunds the police. Eliminating property taxes, what it does, it puts you out of your job.
I'm about to say
your schools.
It's tied to, because somebody had that conversation, and I was like, I didn't realize that was so adjacent to each other, that property taxes align to districts and money and things of that magnitude.
That's right. They fund your schools substantially in terms of just the additional supports that you all need, your school buses, your techs, the people who help make schools function. That's funded by property taxes. And so to defund, to eliminate property taxes, it does defund essential services in our county governments, and it defunds essential services across the state when we eliminate income tax, or we change income tax to a sales tax model, which, unnecessarily puts a higher burden on people who make less money, because a penny tax is a penny, except if I only have 10 pennies and you're charging me a penny, that costs a whole lot more than when I have 100 pennies, right? That feels really, really different. So those are things, they didn't happen. I'm glad that those things weren't eliminated. There were some changes made to it. Less grateful about that, but glad that we did not move to a full elimination movement.
Well, I guess that's my question. Like, Republicans are good for removing stuff, but not having a backup plan or an alternate. So what was going to be the offset if they removed those things? What did that conversation look like?
Was it just sales tax?
So some of it is, kind of special interest tax, what they call. So your film tax credit that has allowed so many people in Georgia to get film jobs. They want to, pull that back some. Different tax credits that companies get, they want to pull back on. And there's some place for that. Like I'm not a full, no, we shouldn't remove any special interest tax credits. However, there's got to be a medium there, because part of how we became the number one place to do business is because we do those tax credits, which brings real jobs to places, right? Like if you think about our Hyundai plants that we have in the state of Georgia are employing thousands of people in rural Georgia, places where they don't have job opportunities. So we start pulling those type of tax credits back. We depress the socioeconomic statuses of those counties, which ultimately makes people not well, right? And so so there's got to be some balance there, but that's often their solution when they offer a solution. But also it's an election year. They don't have to have a solution. They have a good talking point, right? They have a flyer that says, I work to eliminate property tax, right? Like that's the flyer. They didn't have a real solution, and that's the problem.
No, I'm glad that those didn't move very far. And can you talk a little bit about why that may have been the case?
Yeah, so I will say in terms of property taxes, our school systems came out really strong. Mayors, city council members, county council folks came out really strong and said, hey, there's no plan here to fill the gap. And in some places, they offered a penny tax, but in a place like DeKalb or Fulton County where we live, a lot of people live, you can't add another penny tax because we've already been penny taxed to death, right?
Literally.
And so you were talking about $500 million, $600 million gaps in county funding if these bills had passed in terms of full elimination. And so I think that's partly why it didn't pass. I will say we did pass a cap. So basically your property tax rates can't go higher than inflation or 3%, whichever is highest. So it will just slow down the growth of property taxes, which I think is really helpful to a lot of property owners. In terms of income tax, we didn't eliminate it full out because that's just fiscally irresponsible, quite frankly. And I think somebody finally figured that out. But we did lower it by about 0.5 point. So we went from a 5.19 flat tax to a 4.99 flat tax. So it's lowered, and we gave people refunds: $250 if you're a single filer, to $500 if you're married, $375 if you're a joint head of household. Some of you all will get direct deposits and maybe not even notice that it happened. And for other people, The
Yeah, it makes a world of
$500 will make a
difference.
world of difference, right?
Yeah. What is Georgia's fiscal picture right now, like from the state budget?
Yeah, so we still have a healthy surplus, which I would argue that we have a healthy surplus because we've chronically underfunded our government. But however you get it.
Somebody said it. Somebody finally said it. If we're honest,
that's really what's happened.
is
I'm
it
just
really
like,
being properly allocated?
to
We have a
me,
surplus?
like basically we have a surplus. It'd be like if I were running my household and I had a roof like that was leaking and there was a hole and I had buckets that were catching the water, but meanwhile I had $100,000 in my savings account. Like that is essentially how we've been operating with Georgia. But we
I like
do.
that analogy. I
I
will
know,
remember that.
right?
That's exactly. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
But that's what we are. So we do still have a surplus. We spent some of that surplus. This is the governor's last year in office. And so he did spend down some of that in order to send you all a $250 check and to do some infrastructure products.
Also,
Yeah.
I have to give him a shout out, which I don't often do, for the 2000
You got a $2,000
that $2,000 bonus that he
raise.
gave teachers, which I will be getting in about a week. I've said this, and I'm slightly concerned because he does have a soft spot for teachers.
Mhm.
And I don't know what the next governor comes in. Hopefully they have that same heart because he may do a lot of things, but he does take care of educators, and we appreciate you for that because I heard it as a conversation and a talking point, but I was like, I don't know if that's going to happen. And when my administrator was like, yeah, so you can get down your next check, I was like, oh my God, he really did make that happen.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kemp for that. I can't even front. A good
That's
parting
real.
gift. Good parting gift.
It's fair. I will say the little secret around that is it's not just for teachers, it's for all state
Oh, yeah,
employees, including legislators.
Oh, seriously?
That is a secret, yes, that nobody really talks about, and we don't talk about it publicly typically either. But our little $22,000 salary got a $2,000 bump. So
Yeah.
it's all state employees that got a one-time $2,000 bonus as well.
I was quite impressed with that. I can't even front. It just kind of came out of left field.
Well, and teachers have gotten raises. State employees have gotten raises consistently under Governor Kemp. Like
Yeah,
those
he's-
salaries have grown substantially, and because they needed to, because we've been chronically underfunding.
Mhm.
Like you said, the leaky roof and the
And there's
surplus,
much more to
$10,000 in
fund
the bank.
too. I mean, so okay, can I ask this question about it's also to the point of the surplus because it is very jarring to me to see like in states like California and Michigan where they're in Colorado where they're battling like $1.5 billion deficits and cutting healthcare and education, making all these huge slashes to things I never imagined they'd have to slash. And then we're talking about a surplus, which is very, very fascinating to me. At the same time, we don't necessarily have some of the same provisions that are provided and that may make people's lives a little bit better. And like when it comes talking about employees in particular, things like paid family leave, which, Colorado and Oregon and New York and a few other states have state paid family leave for folks who are starting families and who need time off work that they can live on. And also just access to healthcare in general, which I think is also very different in Georgia. And you've been really a huge proponent for healthcare access. So can you talk more about like the spending on healthcare and where some of the money should be or could be going that we don't want to spend?
I mean, so this has been the Republican talking point ever since Trump came into office and began to make major cuts to our social service needs. They said, see, we told you so. This is why we didn't expand Medicaid, because the moment the federal government reneges on their match, it falls back on the states. And so that's been their talking point. We told you so.
They got lucky once. And
Never mind the fact
that
that, literally 500,000 Georgians have gone without health care for 10 years.
part.
And how many of them have died and how many hospitals have closed in the meantime while they were waiting to tell us so. And let's note that it was their Republican president who did this.
Literally.
Who reneged. But nonetheless, that's their talking point. So like Georgia is safe because we didn't expand Medicaid. So we don't have these, huge cuts coming to or significant burden coming down to us as a result of the Trump taxes. That's one talking point. To be clear, I think that lives are very valuable in the fact that we've allowed so many Georgians to flounder without health insurance.
To keep a surplus.
In order to keep a surplus, and really under some type of weird political belief that I guess some people just aren't worthy of having their lives saved with medicine. That's where we are. But I mean, we also have substantial cuts to SNAP that we're going to see that we are not going to, that Georgia's not going to fill those gaps. I think other states have chosen to fill those gaps that the federal government has. And we have just a number of other pieces of just really regressive legislation that has put Georgia in a place where federal cuts don't impact us as much simply because we never adopted the policies in the first place.
Is that a win or a lose?
I think it's a huge lose, right? This is a generational loss because we had a generation worth of really good federal policies that could have been funded, right? I mean, think about how many rural hospitals were closed in the last 8 years because we did not expand Medicaid. When you don't have a local hospital, that's jobs that have been lost, that's educational opportunities that are lost, that's literal lives that are lost.
And people flooding to areas to get more care. So those hospitals are then like always full or overwhelmed because people have to go somewhere.
Right. That's right. So, no, I think that this has been a huge loss. I mean, Republicans would say differently, right? That they predicted the future in which their own Republican government would renege on a promise.
Is that really a prediction, or is that just you knowing that it's coming?
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's like that's not a prediction. You knew it was coming because you're in those meetings to know what's coming down the pipeline. So,
are there any other effects of like the federal government or this particular Trump administration that people may not see or that need to be aware of? I feel like a lot of people were definitely following cuts to SNAP and those conversations, HR1 conversations, but like, can you just talk more about how that led down?
So there's tax on tips is a big piece. Remember, there's no tax on tips.
Yeah.
Trump ran on that. That was enacted in HR1. Georgia did something similar with it, except our cap is $1,700. So
wait, what?
Yeah, but that's not what's going to be on the flyer. The flyer will be, Georgia passes no tax on tips, but the asterisk is up to $1,700. So if you get more than $1,700 in tips on overtime, then all of that is still tax. It's trash. It's all, the devil is in the details, if you will, and the details just don't look good. That's very clear to me, but that is something that people should be aware of in terms of federal government policies. Also, the federal government did not extend subsidies for people who were on the healthcare exchange. So for the many, many, many hundreds of thousands of Georgians who bought their healthcare on the marketplace, they saw their premiums double, triple, quadruple, and many people chose not to enroll as a result of that, right? And so you now have more uninsured people in Georgia than you had a year ago because, again, of federal policies like that.
With less hospitals and less places to seek treatment and things of that magnitude.
That's right.
Okay, on a brighter note, and I'm going to try. I'm trying.
Sure, come on.
What were some offsets that were passed?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that we should celebrate, in addition to your $2,000
yes, Kim, yes.
is that we now have a needs-based scholarship for Georgia students who want to go to college who come from families with need. We are one of, until July, we will be one of only 2 states in the union that does not offer a needs-based scholarship. So we're closing that gap. That was one of Kemp's kind of final hurrahs, was to say, let's implement a dream scholarship to go along with our Hope Scholarship, right? So we have a Dream Scholarship, which will be needs-based, that will hopefully allow more kids to be able to go to college. And so I think that's a huge win for Georgia. I'm sad that it's taken this long, but we got there. As I like to tell people, the governor finally took a lot of really good Democratic ideas and implemented them. Another example of that is that people who've retired in this from the state government, who are part of the state retirement system, which is separate than the teachers. The teachers, y'all got a whole swag thing going on that's real good.
I'm trying to make myself
You got to make your way there.
But I'm just like...
It's a really good retirement system for teachers. But for all other state employees, it's been pretty much trash. State employees who retired have not received a cost of living raise since 2008.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Since 2008.
My God. So I mean, most of them are back to work because I'm sure that's not
people, and this includes police officers.
Seriously?
The party of Back the Blue. But so the highlight is that this year we put in the budget, the big budget, enough money to ensure that there could be cost of living raises moving forward for our state employees who are in the retirement system. So that's a huge win. I will say again, Democrats have been fighting for this for years and years, but we finally got off over that hurdle, and I'm really happy for the hundreds of and thousands now of employees, retirees, who are going to finally see a cost of living increase.
Then probably will have to keep that part-time job or work as many hours to offset the cost of living.
That's right. At least that's the hope, right?
How long is that
It's in the big budget, so that's that's called the continuation budget. So what we did, it's similar to how we've done with the needs-based scholarship, is that we've essentially put an influx of money into what other people probably would think of as an endowment. So the offset, as long as the stock market continues to increase and perform properly, then it will be enough of an offset to ensure that people can have their cost of living raised every year. And that's the same thing with the needs-based scholarship. So we endowed it, and then the offset, the enriches that come off of that from the stock market performing properly will provide for a needs-based scholarship. So that's what we've done. So hopefully this is in perpetuity.
Okay, so that's 2. Anything else? Think hard, Jackson. Think hard. Think hard
as well. We could also talk about
think hard.
Some bills.
Your bills, yes.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's get to your bills. So
I passed some bills. I mean, Republicans' names are on them, but they're still my bills because they like to still get Democratic ideas.
I'm glad we're letting people know this too. So we should talk about strategy after.
So I have been working for 3 years to pass a bill to allow people who were trained internationally as physicians to be able to get their license to practice here in Georgia. This impacts Black people actually quite significantly because a lot of African Americans who are not able to get the MCAT scores necessary to go to med school will typically go to the Caribbean, where they can get all the training, the med school that they need, and then they come back and want to serve. And so it's kind of a backdoor to help Black folks, but it also helps people, folks who, like, say you came from Afghanistan as refugees or places like that. This allows a pathway for them to be able to come online and function as doctors. I worked on that for 3 years, could not pass it as a Democrat, passed that over to a Republican, and it went through with no problem. So that will become enacted in July, and people will have a pathway to be able to become physicians here, which is really exciting, and it's great for Georgia. We need more doctors.
Yes.
We need more culturally competent doctors.
Yes.
Right? And so this helps us get there. So super excited about that. I had another bill that passed that provides funding for rural hospitals to have access to generators. So think about Hurricane Helene, other hurricanes that have come through. They knock out the power. Rural hospitals already have to have generators by law. Like that's a federal law that requires them. But when that breaks, because generators do break, this now sets up a fund so that state government can jump in and fill that need very quickly in a way that just would take way longer if they had to wait on federal funds to get those generators to them. So it's a good win for rural hospitals. It's a good win for rural people. I'm excited about that. And then I have a ton of local bills for DeKalb County that also I think will make a big difference. One of them, most notably, is an increase in pay for our judges. If you want to have a good criminal justice system, you need to have good judges. And how do you keep good judges? You pay them an adequate rate. And so I brought our judges up to an adequate pay so that they would stay and continue to work and not go into private practice.
Yeah, because that's the lure, is going into private practice and really getting what you're worth.
That's right.
So that's the lure. So we talking about like probate judges, those kind of judges?
Magistrate judges, state court judges, probate judges as well. Yeah.
People who tend to be... are those part-time judges? Like, are they
So some magistrate judges are often part-time judges, quite frankly, because they don't make enough money or they can make a lot more money.
And he still was working.
That's right.
I was like, you're working and you're a judge. But when we hear the term judge, we think money. So it's like, you don't make money as a judge?
No.
And then that's when I was like, oh.
No, to be clear, our judges are public servants. In the same way that you as a teacher, you do not command the same freight as if you were working in the private sector. I don't make the same freight as I would make in the private sector being a public servant. Your salaries are depressed. And that's true for our judges as well. They do not make as much money as they would if they were serving as lawyers in the private practice or working as defense attorneys or things like that, right? So they already make a depressed salary. But then for us to just artificially continue to depress those salaries, it puts us at risk of losing really good people on the bench or making them cut their hours, right? So a lot of magistrate court judges are part-time, and you see them reduce their hours more and more in the judgeship because they can make the money they need in the private system when we're not paying them well. So this was really important for DeKalb County. I'm very proud of this work. It was a 2-year long haul to increase these salaries for them. But let me tell you, the judges are real happy with me.
You everybody's best friend right now.
I hope I never need them, but they are really happy with me.
You're their best friend right now. You're their best friend.
Good.
But talking about salaries, for the everyday Joe, was that a conversation in this session?
People, the word affordability was an everyday conversation, right? People were talking a lot about affordability, but actually hitting at the meat, the root of we need salaries to be increased. No, that's not a real conversation that's happening unless you happen to be a public official or a public servant. Then we were able to do something about that, right? But something as basic as trying to raise the minimum wage, non-starter under the Capitol.
What is the argument? I guess that's the thing. What is the argument about not even to have a livable wage increase? What is the argument for that?
Yeah, so we actually had that fight on the floor for the first time in a long time because we introduced it via Senate amendment. And this is one of the jobs I get to do as a whip, is I get to come up with these kind of creative ways to get Republicans on the record about stuff. So I find bills where I can offer amendments that force them to have to talk about it.
Explain that when you say get them on the record. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it means, they're never going to let me pass a bill. They're not going to even hear the bill in a committee. So we're not going to be able to talk about raising the minimum wage in a committee because they just won't call it up, right? But if we have an amendment on the floor, you have to debate it because it's on the floor. It's part of the record, and you're literally going to have to vote on it on the board, right? And so that's
it's accountability thing. So now we get to see,
So
these losers won't vote on it.
Right. No, they will vote no on raising the minimum wage. Like we saw that on the board, but we also got to hear the argument. And the argument that Republicans make is that if you increase the minimum wage, you increase prices for the business owner. And that therefore is going to increase the price of any of the goods and services that you as the consumer buy. Which will then, it's like this really cyclical thing of or they will lay people off because they can't afford to keep as many people.
So it's the bleeding heart small business conversation that it'll put small business out of business, although that's happening now anyway.
Correct. And small business owners can't have insurance because we, have failed to correct our healthcare system, and their employees can't access the marketplace and all these other things.
The things they don't care about those things they actually don't care about anyway.
Right. They don't care about those
things. But they'll hold it for an argument.
But the idea that we would increase, at one point we just had an amendment to bring up our minimum wage to $7.25, which is the federal rate, which is what people actually have to already pay. Even that was a non-starter. They would rather keep our $5.25 or whatever it is on the books.
I think it's $5.15 actually.
So that the federal government drops it. We don't have to. So is that why? So that if they drop it, Georgia is financially safe?
I don't know the reason why, but they wouldn't do it.
And it's a no starter, so there's no negotiating on any pace to increase wages.
Yeah.
So because
unless you're a teacher, then we'll give you $2,000 one time.
I'm about to say that,
which I want
to
emphasize is not a permanent raise, right?
It's a one-time hit. So that may never happen again, depending on who comes in office next. So I'm still trying to understand the conversation around affordability. How do you have an affordability conversation but don't discuss wages?
So you discuss taxes instead. Which is this old trope that, if you study history and you look at kind of the Southern agenda when it comes to white people maintaining power in Southern spaces, purposefully lowering taxes has been a part of that tactic. Because if you can defund government services are accessible to everyone, right? So if you want to make Black people's lives worse, you defund government. You lower the amount of things that government has available to them, and you leave it to the private sector, which white people with money can access.
Yeah, which they don't care anything about because they're not a part of that pot.
That's right. So this has always been a part of the Southern strategy, is to defund government as much as possible. So when they talk about affordability, they talk about taxes and lowering taxes, as opposed to doing real things which brings more money to our pockets, like increasing wages.
And now they've gotten hip to, if we throw them a check, they're happy about it. People still talking about the Trump check from years ago.
The stimmies?
Yeah, the stimmies. We're still talking about the stimmies.
Now let me tell you, the stimmies, and that was good Democratic policy, actually.
I know. Well, what Trump check?
The
Trump check?
We got a stimmy
Trump check. The stimulus check they got 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, so I have a question about this though. So because I think this is part of why Georgia's always called the best place to do business, or the number one state to do business, and I think people underline that is because we have such low labor. Labor is business's number one cost, period. So we have cheap labor and a lot of protections that aren't as strong as they are in other states, like unemployment insurance, for example, which Georgia has, I think, one of the tightest caps and the shortest periods for unemployment insurance of lots of different types of states, no matter what your earnings are. Paid family leave, which we talked about a little bit before. All the tax breaks that they've talked about, those are true, but I think even on the books, there's far more tax breaks for large businesses and businesses period than for individuals at all.
That's right. No, I think that's exactly right. Why Georgia is a great place to do business because labor is cheap. And because you as an employee are not held accountable for how you treat your worker.
That's right.
This is a right to work, right? It's a right to work state, so they can fire you whenever they want to. There are very little constraints and restraints to what you can do as what you can't do as an employee or employer to your employees, including we've made it really hard for folks to unionize as well. This is a terrible state for wanting to unionize, which would bring more protections and, collective bargaining power to employees. So yes, that's why we're a great state. This is the nuance. Great state to do business means terrible state to be a laborer.
Yeah.
That's the translation. And we actually could get to be a place where both could be true, where you could actually be a great place to work and do business. But we've made different choices.
What was the most ghastly bill? I know we didn't, the cultural ones didn't come up, but what was the other most ghastly bill that came across where you just like, are you serious? You can't be serious. Yeah.
We had an elections bill that I thought was particularly dumb, to use a lack of a better. I know you're a teacher. I should use better and more intellectual language. But you teach second graders, so that should be sufficient. So we had an election bill, and it did pass the Senate. I'll talk about two bills, though, actually. But election bill that would require us to move to hand-marked paper ballots.
I saw that. What is... What?
Sure, that's fine. Whatever. You teach schools, kids, they mark things on paper, right?
It's hard to read,
I think, is that how do you still do the SAT by hand? Is that
God, no. Well, I don't know about SAT.
I think the SAT, is it still by hand?
Well, no, you're talking about like Scantrons and stuff.
Yeah, like Scantrons.
We have iReady.
Right. So you do everything on the internet.
Yeah. We have iReady.
Because you trust the internet. But a lot of people don't.
Well, after the scandal with APS.
But that was hand marked.
Exactly.
Because they erased. Anyway, so the whole thing is that there are a whole bunch of white conspiracy theorists who very much want us to move to hand marked paper ballots. I'm neither here nor there about that. I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me. But the process, the bill that was introduced would have created this situation where if you live in DeKalb or Fulton County, where every ballot, depending on where you live, you get a different ballot, right? Because you have a different city council.
Right.
So in DeKalb County, there are 443 different permutations of a ballot that a person could get. Because he wanted to move to hand-marked paper ballots, what that would have required is that every early voting location would have had to have already printed out, I don't know, stacked up in the fellowship hall somewhere. What? Your exact ballot and multiple copies of this. So I'm just like, this opens us up to ballot stuffing so easily because they're already pre-printed and you have to have extras.
Yeah, of course.
Because, you can vote anywhere during early voting in DeKalb County. So
literally,
you're talking about in somebody's church fellowship hall, there will be thousands and thousands and thousands. There are 500,000 registered voters in Georgia. So, think about the number of blank ballots that would just be there. I'm like, this is crazy. This is a security risk.
A scandal episode just waiting to happen.
But you would need hundreds of poll workers.
Every time stuff comes out, I think about scandal. I'm like, that was so true to life. Like the stuff that we saw. Where was the place that not Gary that on the show they were constantly going to? That was some weird name. Anyway,
I can't help you.
This is just so scandal.
This is a disaster.
But you need hundreds and hundreds of more poll workers.
You need hundreds and hundreds of more poll workers. You need a lot more space. I'm just like, I need to go into the printing press company immediately.
Right. I mean, literally, you lying in somebody's pocket.
So it was just ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. And that bill, it passed the Senate. It didn't pass the House. And so I'm grateful for that. The other bill that I think was just really trash and that did pass, is sitting on the governor's desk, and hopefully he'll veto it, is a bill that targets our 5 Black women DAs in Metro Atlanta. And it forces all of those races to become nonpartisan. It doesn't include, there are 59 DAs across the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
Doesn't include them. Just the 5 Metro.
I'm confused. How's that possible?
Yeah. How'd they pull that off?
They wrote a bill in such a way that it carves out so that only the 5 Metro counties are impacted by
They're diabolical. Who sits around to come up with that?
Well, and here's the thing. The DAs came and spoke at the Black women who were, involved in this, came and testified. And they said out loud, this is racist. this is racist. And then white senators are like, oh, I know the senator's heart and I know that he's not racist. And I just wanted to say, like, if a Black woman tells you that something is racist
outright,
you might want to believe them.
It's outright racist.
It's just racist and misogynistic. But it makes all 5 of those races nonpartisan, because the reality is Republicans cannot win a DA race in Metro Atlanta because it's decided in the primary, right? And they're not going to be in the Democratic field. So if they make it nonpartisan, then they feel like maybe they could slip in a Republican. That's the whole thought process here. But fundamentally, it's racist. I actually believe it's also unconstitutional.
I was about to say that doesn't seem constitutional. But no, that goes in that bill I was talking about the other day where they want to take the parties off of the voting thing so that you would no longer be able to see Republicans, Democrats. You would just see names. I was like, that's a stunt. That's a stunt. Because people typically go in and they'll vote down their party. Because I know sometimes I'm not well versed in who's running, but if I see Democrats, I just start voting down. If that's gone, I'd have to do the research, which most people are not going to do the research. I was like, this diabolical again. It's like, how do y'all come up with this stuff?
Yeah.
Just sit around and come up with it.
Well, when you're losing, you find other ways to try to win. And that's the pathway that they've tried to move.
So, well, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of like winning and losing, and because of the year that it is, I am curious how you feel about Georgia's odds, or let's just talk about like the assembly, maybe. Like, so for the Senate and for the House, we do live in a red state. We understand that, but I'm wondering, like, how is the Democratic Party doing, like, organizing, coming up with race, not just like races, but maybe pockets of opportunity in some counties where we may not have it. I don't know if there's some open seats in Gwinnett or other sorts of places, or like how deeply involved you are, but I'm sure some of that would be more helpful for you, like as a whip, especially, right? Like if just having more colleagues. So like, how is that possible in 2027?
Yeah. So I do think, we're going to see movement. There's a likelihood, there is a chance that we could actually flip the House and the House have a Democratic majority. That is possible. With the Senate, it's a little harder, but I will say that this was the first time in 20 years that we have had so many Democrats qualify for state positions across the state. So qualify means that they are on the ballot. We do have a few seats that are uncontested, but the number of seats that are contested is substantial. That's so great. We are fighting. And I will say every time you contest a seat, you bring out more Democrats. Mm-hmm. And so it helps edge us up and it helps with those upper ballots, right? So, John Ossoff running for senator. If there's someone down in Ludowici, Georgia, who's running as a Democrat who knows they can't win, but they can bring out their whole, family and their whole clan to vote for them, they're also going to vote for John Ossoff, and they're going to vote for the, Democratic governor until they get down to their, their cousin's name, right? And so that kind of stuff does make a difference. And so we're seeing some inching. Here's what I'll say. If we can elect a Democratic governor, we will see drastic change in our General Assembly. In the House, I actually believe that we will flip it. Even if we don't win the number of seats, people will switch parties in order to become a part of it, because having a governor who is on your side of the team is a powerful thing. So I anticipate that if we can win, and I think we can, if we get a Democratic governor, I think we take the House, and I think that we come actually really, really close to taking the Senate as well.
So who you betting on?
Have you endorsed?
I have endorsed.
Okay.
Oh, I've endorsed. Not only did I endorse, I recruited. I recruited Jason Estevez.
Okay.
I went with my leader. He was in the whip, Harold Jones, and I went to Jason Estevez when he was still a senator, and sat him down and says, "Jason, we think you need to run for governor," and he laughed at us.
What was the laugh? What was the laugh for?
It was what the hell are you talking about? It was that kind of laugh, right? But we sat down and then we kind of made the case of like, listen, you are incredibly talented. You're the right stage of life to do this. He's a lawyer. He's a business owner. He's a family man. He's a Georgia. I mean, he's from Columbus. Like, this is a Georgia boy. And he's been incredibly talented and gifted. He served on the APS school board during COVID and helped hold things down. He, along with others who worked with him, right, increased the high school graduation rate for APS to the highest that it's been ever. And so you know, he's got just such a winning record, but he's also just a good human being. And so I saw that in him in his service early on in the state Senate and went to him and said, Jason, I need you to think about it. And it was with the contingency of like, listen, I don't want you to be a sacrificial lamb. I love having you here in the Senate. So like if we can't see a pathway for a Democrat to win, then please don't leave the Senate. I love having you here. You're great. But if there is a pathway, then I want you to consider running.
Sure.
And when it became clear that there was a pathway for a Democrat to win governor, he said yes. I'm sure a lot of other people also, you know, help lean on him, and there's all other reasons.
Sure.
But I like to think that
Okay.
I
He's a good
am
human.
largely responsible for him running for governor.
What if it's Keisha?
It's not going to be Keisha. If Reddit could vote, and I know it can't, but if Reddit could vote, Keisha is trash in those polls.
Gotcha.
Somebody said it. But I'm worried about that name recognition, that people won't think about her tenure as mayor and just name recognition. I know Keisha. Like,
I think voters are better than that. I really do. I think that voters are better than that. Sure, in the polls right now, that's the only name they know. But as more people, Jason Estevez is on TV now. As more people get out there, I think there will be some hits that come after her. I don't think Keisha can win. I don't think she can win the primary. I very much don't think she can win the general. So I'm very hopeful that she does not win the primary. And I say that knowing good and well that I'm a Black woman who's speaking negatively about a Black woman who's running.
I wouldn't go call that card, because the reality is I didn't think she did good as a mayor. So I'm not here for it.
You know, she didn't run for a second term, and didn't really give us a really good reason for not doing that. We cannot have, if we win the governorship, we cannot have a one-termer.
Yeah.
That is
Fair.
absolutely essential. And she's already shown to us that she is willing to be a one-termer.
Yeah, that stamina's not there.
And honestly, that's my same issue with Mike Thurmond. I love Mike Thurmond. He called me. He was so great. Called me to let me know he was running. He already knew that I, was with Jason, and still just wanted to have that, honor of just, he was very gracious.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Mike, I will never speak negatively about you in the streets, because I know what kind of leader you are. You're a great guy, and you're in your 70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't need no more of that.
We need a two-termer.
Yeah, we
need
need
someone who's like good and still healthy, and I don't mean to be ageist, but there are some realities about the aging body, and so that's why I'm not
with Jeff Duncan.
I have spoken with Jeff Duncan.
It's a look. It's a look.
Nothing to that.
He doesn't understand Democratic policy.
Okay.
I mean, he's a good guy. I served with him. He was lieutenant governor.
Your experience with him, maybe.
Yeah, he was lieutenant governor when I was there. I appreciate it. He had smart people who worked on his team. Actually, a lot of my success as a freshman was because of his team. They were willing to work with me as a Democratic freshman to help me move bills, and that's a great sign of good leadership. But fundamentally, when I met with him, I asked him just some basic questions about not the big Democratic issues.
Yeah.
Right. So sure, he's good on abortion now. He's got that figured out. He's good on guns. He's good on Medicaid expansion.
All the headlines.
He's got the big three. But if you dig deeper into more Democratic policy around kind of criminal justice reform, or even some of the nuances, like one of the things I raised with him is that LGBTQ couples are still having to adopt their child if they weren't the person that gave birth. And I want to be able to solve that. He's just like, what? That has to happen? It's stuff that if you were
oblivious to the things that the inner workings.
The inner workings,
He's not.
The real devil in the details, kind of the level of policy that we work on a regular basis. He's just not aware of it. And when I asked him, what are you doing to get aware of it? Like, who are you reading? Who are you talking to so that you can develop real clear sense of what democratic values and policies are beyond the big three? I wasn't pleased with his answer. I didn't think he had a good answer around it. He is good about saying, I'll hire good people, which is important. Yes,
That's
hire
a
good
company
people.
line. That's a company line.
But he wasn't able to talk about his own development and growth beyond the kind of big three issues. And that's problematic for me.
Very.
Sure. Yeah. I've said on the show a couple of times how when I saw his name pop up as running, how excited I was. And then I saw the parentheses and what the letter was in it. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, what? Because I'm thinking this is a Republican, candidate for governor. And I'm like, okay, that could be a potential upgrade if we keep a Republican governor. And I was very, very surprised and disappointed at the same time.
Final thoughts.
Yeah.
So I think final thoughts, elections matter. And they matter even more, perhaps. I know we say this every time elections come up, but this is a particularly critical moment for the state of Georgia. If we can flip Georgia blue, that means holding Jon Ossoff's seat in the Senate, which I'm really not worried about. But if we can flip that governorship, then you will see market change. Real conversations about wage increase will happen. All of the types of policies that actually really matter, they will begin to happen just by flipping that one seat. And so I am urging people, I don't actually care whose name is on the ballot with a D in front of it, even if it's Keisha, even if it's Jeff's. I need people to go out hard in November, October too, because it's early voting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And work to flip that seat so that it'll make my job easier, quite frankly. If we have a Democratic governor, Republicans have to negotiate with us in a different way, right?
Yes.
And we have to work together. So I think if we want to make Georgia better, safer, fairer, more prosperous, then go out and vote. Bring your friends too. Bring that whole clan with you to vote to make Georgia blue.
Final thought, 30 seconds.
Yes, we'll do everything we can to do exactly that. We need to get our friends back here at the ACLU to figure out what the rules are to make sure that we don't violate them, because I don't want to have water bottles if I can't. But we are going to be spending a lot of time pushing for turnout this year, like a lot of time.
Actually, I want to get your boy on here. Since you riding for him, you need to help me make that happen. Let's get him on here so we can get his voice, because like I said, I think name recognition worries me about Keisha, that people know that name.
Sure.
And that worries me. Special thanks to Senator Jackson for coming in and sitting with us as usual. Great conversation. And yeah, we'll see you same time, same place on the Leadership Been Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Sherry.